Welcome to another video by Pharos Technology. We've now been through two of our videos and two of the processes to start creating our Pharos database. We have their user stories, we have our conceptual information, and what I want to do this time is I want to pull up my favorite tool. I love playing around in Visio for a variety of things. Visio by Microsoft is a tool that I've used to diagram floor plans, to diagram databases, to set up entity relationship diagrams, and really document in databases a lot of what work I have done, especially when it comes to beginning the work on queries and figuring out what data is going to go into queries and where it comes from and what it does and the relationships between those tables. It's an incredibly good tool to be able to use for it. So let me call up my Visio. What I want is the crow's foot database notation. So I'm going to open up that one. So I'm going to create that here. It opens up with an 8.5 by 11 sheet. What it does is it looks at your printer setup and looks at the default of your printer setup for page size. Now, if you've got a plotter, if you're lucky enough to have a plotter, for these kind of applications, a plotter is just wonderful. You can set the paper size to be the size of the plotter, which could be 36 inches wide and however long you wanted it to be, because usually they're on rolled up pieces of paper. Now it comes up so that it shows the whole page on a single page. I like it to be at 100% and sometimes a little bit larger than that, but I'll put it at 100%. So what we did now is we talked to Robert, and in talking to Robert, he gave us these list of user stories in our last video. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the data sources that he gave to us as where we can get the fields. We're going to also add a lot of things in the process. Remember, in my first video, I complained about the fact that our scripts end up all over the place. If I write them, they end up in one spot. If Robert writes them, he ends up in another spot. And we're having a hard time collating those and keeping track of those. So the database is also going to help us to do that too. So remember, as a scripts writer, he wants to organize his ideas. He wants to understand the audience. There's where the profiles will come in. He wants to process the publishing information. In other words, the dates he published it and the information that he puts into each script, like the visuals that he uses, whether he's doing it in front of green screen or we're doing it on location, all of that basic information, and of course tracking the work done. I think I already mentioned that. So most of this information is found in this tab called Videos down here. So I'm going to flip over to that, and I'm not going to bore you with me typing things out, but I am going to just pull this in and show you how Visio will help us to visualize and put together the database schema. I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to copy elements and paste them over here instead of having you watch me type them. The data that I collected from the spreadsheet basically told me that I needed to have a core of the database called Video Project, and that's what I'm going to call it anyways, Video Project. The primary key is going to be my project ID. I'm going to have a script table. I'm going to have a profile table, you know, the table that talks about the personas that I want to be talking to. And then I want to have who's writing the script. Right now it's just Robert and myself. So then we have various other pieces of data that I took from the spreadsheet. What video is the next video in the series? That's our endpoints. The end of this video points to the next video, tells that. Who's the name of the writer? What date was the script done? What date was the writer done? Was the writing done and paid and so forth? All these basic pieces of information. Now I can see that I probably don't need to have the writer name in here if I have the writer ID here, and I'll just pull that in with a query, so that doesn't need to be a duplicate field here. So you know, one thing that's nice about Visio is that you can modify things as you need to, and you can spot mistakes before you put them in your database and they become big problems later. That's what I like to do with it, is like to visualize. So here's my basic project table. So what does my script table look like? And the script table then looks like this. The script ID here, FK, Visio lets me identify the foreign key versus the primary key. FK allows me to link these two and show how they're going to be linked. Now, this is going to be an interesting one in the respect that there's going to be a script ID here, and the table script is actually going to be, it's going to be a many-to-many relationship. In other words, there's going to be a lot of projects that may refer to the same script. There's also projects that may have several pieces of a script together, and I might need several records out of it. So I'm going to go ahead and take my relationship here, and if I click out of here, here's the clawfoot there, the many side and the one side over here. So if you're familiar with ERD notation, here's how you denote where the foreign key is and the primary key is. So I'm going to go ahead and attach this one to the primary key here, and attach this one to the foreign key here. Now normally that would create a, many video projects could attach to one table script. Okay, so it's somewhat backwards here. So in the schema now, it can have many script IDs in the video project that point to one particular script in the script, table script. But notice I have a double primary key. In other words, two fields that make up that primary key. Robert expressed that he needed to be able to sometimes create multiple pieces of that script. So the script ID is going to be the one that specifically identifies the single script that goes to this particular project, but the subscript ID will be able to tell me which pieces, and Robert will be able to take that. Notice there, neither one of them are auto-generated. We'll create the script ID on the fly when we open up the video project, and so each record will automatically get that script ID assigned that will be from the video project. And then the subscript ID will be the order in which he is able to put it in. So script number 1, he'll be able to have part number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and identify those in multiple ways. So that's a quick, easy way to get a many side when you typically would only get one record from table script. You can get multiple records by having that composite key. So little interesting stuff there. So now we have our profile. I'll put that down here so that I can draw the line between profile ID and profile ID here. And you're kind of getting the point. We don't need to belabor this very long. But you can see that they're built that way. And so I will continue building all of this information and laying out my tables and putting the information together here so that I can then later on go over it with Robert, explain it with Robert, and then after explaining it to Robert, if he doesn't see any issues with it, my next video will be taking this information and actually putting it in the database. So the next video will be putting it in the database, and that's pictured here. Be sure to subscribe after this video. I'd appreciate it. See you again later. Thanks.